With my corporate background, I was just like, oh my God, I've interviewed so many people in corporate. Like, I don't ever want to do an interview again. Like, no, I don't want to do it. And finally, I'm just like, my clients are asking me for this. It aligns perfectly with what we already offer. Why am I not doing this? And had to get myself in the mindset of, just because I say yes today and add it to my service offerings does not mean that I physically have to do it forever within my business, that I can eventually hire someone else and delegate those roles and responsibilities. So my business offers it, and it's not just me.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 224 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Today I get to bring you Jamie Van Cuyk. Now, she has such an interesting story about moving from corporate America, trying several things. Raise your hand if you've done this, right? Trying several things to not have to go back to corporate, knowing that going back to corporate wasn't the right decision for her, but sort of having to meander through the lovely winding road of entrepreneurship until she hit that service for her that was both profitable and filled with joy for her. She did the thing that so many of us do, which is someone asks you consistently if you could provide a service, and you keep saying, oh no, that's not me. And I got to use my favorite line, listen for it. When 3 people tell you you're drunk, lie down. Jamie Van Cuyk is the owner and lead strategist of Growing Your Team, and she helps women who own small businesses become confident leaders who hire right every single time. Drawing from over 15 years of leadership experience, Jamie teaches her clients how to master the art of hiring by learning the dynamics of each company and their specific needs. She helps them find their perfect fit, long-lasting team members and avoid the hiring-firing cycle. If you run a small business, you know how hard it is to turn your baby over to someone else. If you start a small business, you're the one doing everything for a really long time, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of trust to start to turn things over to someone else. I asked Jamie exactly about what someone needs to do when that happens, and she gave a beautiful 3-step answer. I hope you listen in for that. You'll find it really helpful. All right, without further ado, pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Jamie, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. We are talking about something I know entrepreneurs struggle with a lot today with hiring, and I'm really excited to jump in on that with you. But before we get in too far, I would love to know, and I'm sure the girlfriends are curious as well, out of all the things on the planet that you could have chosen to focus on, why is helping people learn how to hire and delegate what you love to do?
Yeah. So I love sharing this. And I feel like in this instance on this podcast, we're going to get so much more in depth than I typically can share. Is my journey to get here was not like a straight line at all. If you asked me when I was in corporate what type of business I'd be running, this would have never been it. And I think it's like important. That's an important thing to start with. There is you pivot a lot, you change a lot, you learn more of what you want to do. So just start a lot of times and you'll eventually get there. But the very start of the path for me getting to this point was I always knew I wanted to run my own business one day. My dad ran his own business. I liked a little bit of the flexibility that I could see for him. He was able to be there for anything that we needed, whether it was just a ride to and from school, being able to go to a sporting event or things like that, because he built his own schedule. He ran a machine shop. I didn't like the idea of a machine shop. He asked if I wanted to take it over one day, and I'm just like, no, that's not the type of business I want. But I got to see that he worked hard so he could be there for family. Shortly before I decided to take the exit from corporate, he made comment to me in a conversation, just randomly. He goes, I could have stayed working for someone else and I would have made a lot more money, but I wouldn't have had the life that I wanted outside of work. And that was more important than the money. And that really stood out to me. It was like, all right, I really need to do this. I am definitely going to run my own business one day. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, all right, well, I figure out what type of business I want to run. While I was in corporate, I decided to take advantage of learning everything I could about running a business on someone else's dime. So I made sure to go into management so I could learn how to manage people. I went and worked on special projects so I could learn about different departments. So one of the special projects I worked on happened to be with HR and hiring because I wasn't in HR. So I got to learn a lot while I was there. And my husband and I always talked about, we're like, what type of business will we eventually run? And we kept coming back to something in the software arena. My husband, he's a software developer by trade. So it was like, okay, that seemed like the easy thing because he could write the software and I could run the business and he could lead the software team while I was doing all the other business stuff. So we're like, perfect, we'll do this together. Well, my husband's very risk adverse. So he never really wanted to be the first one to leave corporate. He even went through 2 layoffs where I was just like, this is it.
Yeah.
Don't go get another job. This is our time. And him being like, no, not yet. I don't know. I don't think we're there yet. We don't have the right idea. And I'm just like, but you got to start somewhere. Like no one knew these businesses were going to be what they are when they first started. You just got to start. But he was very risk adverse. And then finally, one day, it was a bad day at work. I don't have care for my daughter. I have to start all over in my search. That's it. I'm quitting my job and becoming a stay-at-home mom.
Wow.
And then I thought about that for 30 seconds and I said, who am I kidding? I could never be a stay-at-home mom. I could do it, but I wouldn't be happy doing it. If I did it, I would look back years from now and resent the fact that I stood home instead of growing my career and growing a business. But then it dawned on me, I was like, but I don't have to stay in corporate in order to keep working. Is there a possibility where I can quit my job, be at home with my child, seeing I can't find care, and use that time while she's napping or the evenings and weekends when my husband's home to start the business we've always been talking about doing? And I said, all right, let me look into this. So I sat there and at that point in time, I had 2 business ideas. One was a software development company with my husband, and another one was a different idea that was kind of just like a passion project of mine. And so I sat down and ran some numbers real quick. And I was like, all right, I could never really make a living off my passion projects. I feel like I don't have the skills. I don't have the time. I don't have anything to build that up. So I'm going to keep that maybe as a passion project, but let's do the software development business. The problem was, as I said, my husband's a software developer. I wasn't. So I actually decided at that point in time, when I quit my job, I was going to spend the first few months learning how to program so I could help him do the software development.
That's not a small skill to pick up, Jamie. You're like,
Yep.
so I think I'm going to become a rocket scientist in a couple months.
Right?
Like, wow, because that's not just a skill. Most people are like, I think I'm going to pick this up real quick.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And part of the reason why I felt like it was possible is I'm probably going to get some of these wrong, but when I was looking at the research and stuff at that point in time, I believe it was the people that originally started Instagram before it was bought out by Facebook. They didn't know any coding before they started it. They learned as they created it. And I was like, look at what they created. Like there were some other things. It was like this list of these huge tech companies that the founders started and learned how to code as they were coding because they needed to get it to a certain level so they could start getting investors. And I was like, if they did it, why can't I? Because I'm going to be learning it, but my husband already knows it. So I only need to do some of it, not all of it. I have someone that can guide me. I have someone that if I have questions, they can answer my questions. So I was like, it's possible. So I did go to my husband that night when I thought about it. I was like, listen, I have this crazy idea, but I don't want your input on it yet. I'm just going to tell you what it is. I was like, because I need to do some research. I need to do some planning around it. I'm a huge planner, but one of the things that I thought was very important for me was this was going to be a big change for me in order to quit my corporate job, a corporate job that I was having a lot of success at and that I loved, to do something completely different. And I said, I need to make sure that this is the right decision for me. And then we can talk about it. Is it the right decision for the family? So I did a bunch of research. I did a bunch of planning. I created pros and cons lists. I looked into our bank accounts and everything. And I was just like, okay, this is a good decision. Now let's make sure it works for the family. And a few months later, I turned in my notice. I left corporate and I lasted 6 months, only 6 months learning how to program. And then I was done. I was like, nope, not for me.
Not for me. Oh my God, that's so interesting. So hang on a second. So there's a lot of things here. So what I love about what you're sharing in this journey is that you guys really took the time, you especially, right? Because you're like, I'm the one who needs to not be having daycare be 8 months out, right? So you're really looking at this and you had that bad day at work. Everything is not great. You're trying to figure out which business model is actually going to work the best, which is so great. You do the math, passion project out. I hope people are listening. right? Because there's so many passion projects, and I believe you can make a business out of anything, and then you got to back it up with numbers and data. And I love, Jamie, that you share that piece of it, that it's really about like, okay, but how do we get it out in front of people, and what problem does it solve? And then it sounds like you really leaned into the idea that Facebook started quite small. Like, for anybody who's seen The Social Network, right? I love that you shared that. That was so great, because it starts with this small thing, and then they listen to data and they tweak and change. And then you jumped into coding and you're like, oh dear heavens, no. And that is the journey, just the swiveling of it. So now you're 6 months in and you're like, no, thank you, please, with the coding. Thank you. Have a nice day. So what did you do at that point?
Yeah. So it was a point where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I knew that going back to corporate at that point in time was not the right decision for me. We had obviously going to build a software, you're not making any money at first. Like, it takes a long time to get any money. So we knew financially we could survive for quite a long time without me making an income, which gave us a little bit more of a buffer room and everything to kind of play around and figure out, okay, what do I do next? And I realized I loved consulting. The main projects that I ended up working on were all around leadership development. One was a big training program for some of their leaders, and another one was helping a first-time manager really come fully into their role. They were great at being that individual contributor, but there's this whole aspect of people leadership that's like, you think you know it, but then you get in there and you're like, wait, what do you mean? And a lot of it, like communicating up to your senior leaders and communicating down to your team, and these learning how to balance the roles and responsibilities and step out of doing it yourself and trusting your team to do it and all these things. And so I realized I loved that, like working with this person, I enjoyed it. I realized that I was only supposed to be dedicating so much time a week to the consulting, and I was good about dedicating those hours and stopping at those hours. But those hours were always coming before me sitting down at the computer to learn how to program. Like, I was prioritizing that. And I was like, I think that's a sign that I really, really like doing that. So I sat there and said, okay, well, what do I do here? Like, how do I turn this into a business? How do I get other clients? And so for a while, I just started blogging, because I was just like, let me just start kind of putting stuff on paper, started talking about things, and I'm going to figure out how to really create a business around this. One of the things I did was I had a chamber membership because of the software development company. And I just started going to the chambers and networking and doing a lot of networking and talking to people. At that point in time, because I really loved working with this individual, I came from a corporate background. I thought, all right, maybe I'm going to help other people like this step into their first leadership role inside corporate companies. But I was like, I have no idea how to market to corporate companies. I have no idea how to put a package together that they would actually want, that they would bite on when I'm going to go talk to people that don't know me.
Right. Because it was your reputation was probably really great, right? Like, your internal reputation was probably amazing. But then how do you go introduce to others? Yeah.
Yeah. I was in a job in corporate where I didn't have to talk to anybody but our clients outside of my company. So I didn't have a huge network. Like, even the clients that I had, like, they were spread all over. They weren't in positions where they'd be the decision makers for these. So maybe they'd be able to make a connection, but I didn't have connections in my network then of any decision makers who would actually be able to buy onto these products and buy onto my services. So I was just like, what do I do? So I was like, let me go network, let me go talk to people, find out the real problems, so I could then create the package and I could start talking to people and getting my foot in the door other places. What I found when I was going to those chamber events is almost every person I ended up speaking to was a small business owner.
Oh, interesting.
And I was just like, okay. But that's very normal here. Like, I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are a very big small business community. So I was just like, okay, here's what we have. Here's who I'm talking to. Let me still see what I can learn from them. So during those conversations, I kept hearing over and over again that hiring was their number one problem. And I knew from research that hiring was a big problem in corporate too. So it's not just a small business problem. So I was just like, okay, this is good. I'm finding out what their problems are. I can use that to communicate to corporate companies. So I'll just keep using this research. And people would ask me like then, okay, well, what is it that you're doing? And I was like, well, I'm doing leadership consulting and talking a little bit about it. They're like, well, then can you help me? And I would say, no, because my client is going to be corporate clients. and you're a small
Jamie,
business and I'm going to stay in my lane. Because that's what they say is like, stay in your lane.
but
And at that
Jamie,
point in
when
time,
people keep asking, you got to say
I
yes
know
eventually. My
we'll
goodness, it's
eventually,
so good.
get there. But I
Yeah,
was like,
it's
I'm
so
staying in
good.
my lane.
Yeah.
And part of me, it was like kind of that doubt. It was like, I have a corporate background. I don't know what it's like to run a
I
small
don't,
business.
yeah.
So I was like, I don't know if I can talk to them. So I was like, I can't help you, but I will find you somebody who can. And so I went out and started doing research and I was like, okay, who's helping small business with hiring? And I could find nobody.
Yeah.
If someone was listing on their website that they're helping small business with hiring, their definition of small businesses was a minimum of 50 employees. Well,
Wow.
you can't get to 50 employees if you screw up with all your first few hires. You know, yes, technically that's a small business, but not the small businesses that I was talking to. So I couldn't
Mhm.
refer those people.
Right.
Or they were more general business coaches and consultants where hiring was maybe a part of what they talked about, but it wasn't the main thing. And they're like, but I don't need all that. Like maybe I'm working with this other coach for this, and I really need someone to help me on this specific thing. I need to be able to get hiring help without having to pay for everything. And I really want it like, so I was just like, there's no one I can really refer these people to. So finally it dawned on me, I was like, why am I not that person? Why am I not doing this myself? Like people need it. They're asking me for their help, but I'm turning them away and there's nowhere for them to go that's really
Mhm.
going to help them. And I realized that, yeah, small businesses are different than corporate companies, but at least the way with like my thought processes and how I explain things, I could break it down to something to the core basics that work anywhere. And then let's figure out these core basics inside their unique company versus how you do it in corporate.
Love it. Oh my gosh. But you're reminding me. I just got so excited because this happens so often. People are like, no, I don't do that thing. It's like one of my favorite phrases is when three people tell you you're drunk, lie down. So it's like when somebody keeps asking for the same thing, it's like, okay, I think I keep getting asked about this. I love how you you took the long road to get there, but I love that you got there. I think that is such a common experience. I'm so happy you're talking about it because I don't think enough people talk about it. They're like, yeah, I'm really good at that. Or yeah. But when I'm helping people figure out what business they could start, one of the questions I ask is, what do people come to you for?
Mhm.
And it's so funny how we dismiss it. We really do. We're like,
Right.
no, not me. No, not me.
Yep.
I love it. So good. And I love
Well,
too that
yeah.
you took what happens in corporate, like those same questions that are needed, the same techniques for hiring well, all of those ideas that you're like, listen, these are the basics. Let's start with these. And then we can tailor it and retrofit it into these smaller businesses that are at 0 or 1 or 2 or 5. It's so
Yeah.
smart because, like you said, you can't even get to 50 employees if you keep messing up those original hires. So good.
Yeah, and just another thing of like when people keep asking for it. So a lot of my business, we focus around hiring education, really focusing on
Mm,
narrowing down to that idea candidate and making sure you have everything that you need to find that idea candidate. So for the longest time, we were helping our clients so they could find their idea team member and everything. We were writing the job postings, we were writing interview guides, we consult with them throughout the process, but we weren't doing any recruiting ourselves. And I kept having
mm.
clients being like, all right, that's great. Now I understand the process, but I'm ready to delegate it to someone. And I'm not at the point where I can have an HR team member on my team. Will
Right.
you do some of the recruiting for us? I kept being like, no. With my corporate background, I was just like, oh my God, I've interviewed so many people in corporate. Like, I don't ever want to do an interview again. Like, no, I don't want to do it. And finally, I'm just like, my clients are asking me for this. It aligns perfectly with what we already offer. Why am I not doing this? And had to get myself in the mindset of, just because I say yes today and add it to my service offerings does not mean that I physically have to do it forever within my business, that I can eventually hire someone else and delegate those roles and responsibilities. So my business offers it and it's not just me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think that is such a huge insight. What you just shared is a paradigm shift for small business owners that gets jumped over so often. It's almost like we have two issues, I think, that come up. I'd love to know what you think about this, Jamie, because it's like there's the one side where people just constantly keep pumping out offers and they have 89,000 things that you can work with them on and you don't know what to do because there's too many. Because somebody asks them for something and they just say yes right away. And then they try to figure out how to do it right. And then there's the other side, which is I don't want to offer that because I don't want to have to do it, but it's totally congruent. It fits in beautifully and people keep asking me for it. And that paradigm shift of like, just because we offer it doesn't mean it's all on me. So big. And I think it's
Yeah.
just so great that you saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And it was just like one of those things, like you said, sometimes you offer like too much stuff. It's, I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of us do that at first. We're still trying to figure out, we're still
Sure.
trying to make those micro pivots in our business. And even though since I really started growing your team, at this point when we're recording, we're coming up on almost 6 years. And the offers that I had when I started and the offers that I have now don't necessarily look the same. We pretty much provide the same type of help, but we were able to fine tune based on what our clients wanted and the feedback we were giving and what they were asking for and everything to say, okay, this is what this package needs to hold. And at one point in time, I realized I was putting way too much in one of the packages and putting stuff there that the clients didn't care about, they didn't need, but I was putting it in there because I was like, ooh, I need to pad this package. And then it's like, I don't need to pad the package because the clients don't care about that. So why am I giving stuff that they're technically not paying for? If
Mm,
they want it, they go into this other package and things like that. And so you shift things around a
yeah.
little bit until you find like, these are my core offers. Here's what I'm giving. And there's things where once a client works with us, if they come back and say, all right, we need support, but what we need doesn't actually fit into one of your packages. Can you do this? Then we'll be like, yeah, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can figure this out of how we can support you. But we only do that with clients that we've already worked with because we know their business, we know
Yeah.
their communication style and things like that. So that way we're not getting into that thing of this person's asking for something really random and now we have to change our entire business
Yes.
model and they end
Oh
up
my God,
being a
but
pain in the
Jamie,
butt client.
I mean, people do that all the time, right? It's like we hear about it all the time where someone's like, somebody made some sort of request over here and they feel like they have to make that a core product offering and it actually doesn't fit. And so I love that you wait until you actually work with the client. You know, this is somebody that you want to serve. And at that point, if they need something that's custom, you can add it in. I think that's so
Yep.
great. So
Yeah.
good. And so I know as you're helping people hire, and I hear this a lot as a business coach too, that once these small businesses hire, the CEO and or founder or beautiful human that is running the show gets really freaking scared to actually start to delegate. I have a feeling you've run into this and I'd love to know how
Oh,
you
yes.
work with your clients through this.
Yeah. So this happens all the time because our core businesses that we work with, they're not just hiring. They are typically taking tasks that used to be the CEO's responsibility and
Yeah.
creating a whole new position. So someone is doing those tasks outside the CEO for the very first time. Those are the positions that we love to help companies hire for. And it is scary because you're trusting someone else to do this. And outside, when you're working for someone else, when it's your business, you understand how your revenue is impacted by your tasks. You understand how your personal income is impacted by your revenue. You understand that all of a sudden, if things get screwed up,
Yes.
that might mean that you're not paying yourself or you have to cut back on what you're paying yourself and you feel those impacts.
Mhm.
So we start in our minds planning for the worst case scenario before we're even there and we start saying, but this could happen. Yeah, it could happen. You could also bring that person in and your business bring in an extra 100% of revenue that month. Like you never know what's going to happen, but we start thinking about all the worst case scenarios. And because we're so tied to our business and we built it from the ground up, it's scary. Those worst case
Right.
scenarios, we know how they'll impact us if they happen. So we always have to get around that, saying that a lot of times with hiring, we say start small. This
Mhm.
isn't a person that's going to come in and be a second you right away. You're hiring people to help make an impact in your business because you can no longer make the impact in your business that's there.
Mm. Mm.
So you need support in this area because you can't do it all. And if you keep trying to do it all, you
It's
can't
going to
grow your
break.
business. You're going to get burnt out and things are going to
Yeah.
happen anyway. So it's about trusting someone, but then how do you trust someone? And part of what we go through is the first thing is just remember, no one is going to do things just like you. So you need to give up on things are going to be done exactly the way that you've been doing them when you bring someone in. That yes, you'll set guidelines and everything, but there's going to be minor things that are different. A team member completes something. Let's just go the simplest example, like you to start delegating some of your graphic design for marketing things.
Mhm.
What they develop is never going to look exactly like you. Even if you have a template, okay, they might, and that like there's some flexibility in that template. Okay, they might put in a different picture than you would have put in. But does the picture work? It's not
Mhm.
what you would have picked, but does it work? Okay, let it go. Like
Right.
there's certain things you have to realize that your way isn't the only way.
Mhm.
So you have to let go and say, It's okay for things to be done slightly differently. It's okay for it not to be 100% me, because you're never going to grow a team if everything has to be 100% you all the time.
Yeah, so true. It's not possible, right? I mean, there's just no way.
Yep.
I think though, the one piece that I'm hearing, like I could feel like I can hear people like raising their hands as we're talking, like, hey, wait a second, is how do you develop that trust? Is it like what you're saying, like tiny project after tiny project? Like, how do we develop trust with people that we bring into our businesses that are our hearts and souls, our little babies, and we're turning them over? How do we develop that trust?
Yeah. So there's three different things that we're going to look at here. So the first thing is really knowing who your idea candidate is.
Okay.
You have to be clear on who you're going to hire, and not so much just that they're going to do XYZ tasks, but who they are in terms of how they fit into your organization. What is the expected communication style? Who are you as a manager? Are you someone that likes to be completely hands off? So they need to be 100% self leader, thinking through problems on their own? Do they need to be someone who comes to you because you're not ready for that and you want that daily or multiple times a day communication and being brought into the loop? Like, who are you as a leader? What is your communication style? What is your personality versus their personality?
Yeah.
And all those things, so you understand who's going to fit into the role. What are
Right.
your expectations? What does it mean for someone to be successful in this role? And that's an area where a lot of people are just like, I need help. Because a lot of times when we go to
Okay.
hire early on, we're drowning. We're
Right.
working way more hours than we need to. We're overwhelmed. And we're just like, I just need help. I don't have time to think about this. I just need help.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times you bring in somebody and they end up not being the right somebody. So you really need to focus first and foremost on who is it that you need? What tasks are they going to do? And how are they going to fit into your organization? How are you going to manage them? And all those things. So that's
Got
the
it.
first thing we do when we're working with clients is we bring them through a series of questions to really find out who is your idea candidate, who is going to be successful in this role and you're going to be happy with. That right there is the core that every other part of the hiring process like spokes out from there. If you don't know that, there's no way the rest of the hiring process is going to be successful.
That makes sense.
So that's the first thing, is know who you're going to hire. The second thing is to set up a hiring process that brings you to that direct person. Too many times businesses will just say, I'm hiring, I need someone. Or for example, early on hires, they'll say, I'm hiring a VA. Well, tell me a little bit more, because there's a million VAs probably going to see that message and going to be like, hey, I can be your VA, but they all do things different. All
Right.
right. So if you know who it is that you want to hire, because you've already figured out that idea candidate, instead of just saying, I'm hiring a VA, you need to be specific when you put out that message. I'm hiring a VA who XYZ, who could do these, help with these tasks and things like that. It's okay with your job posting and your hiring messages to turn people off, to have people say, that's not me. No, thanks. I'm going to move on to something else. So you want to talk directly to the person that you want to hire. You then create interview questions that help you uncover exactly what you need to know about this person, these candidates. We're not going to ask generic interview questions. Every interview question you ask should be tied back to something that you need to know about that idea candidate. Like I said, once again, going back to that idea candidate to make sure you're asking the right questions, uncovering the right information to actually determine, is this person the right person for you versus just someone who says they could do these tasks,
Right.
but not going to
Love
do
it.
it in the way that you want them done. So we
Got
really
it.
want to make sure we're asking the right interview questions. And then finally, the last stage is the onboarding. So you
Okay.
find your person, they're bringing them on, and most people want people to be super productive on that first day, or maybe one day of training, and then you hit the
Perfect. From
ground
day
running.
one. Yeah.
That is not going to
Yeah.
happen. Onboarding takes time. Depending on the position and depending on what you're delegating and what they have to learn, that's internal knowledge versus what they can bring to the table, the onboarding path will look different, the time frame will look different, but you have to train on all your expectations. So keep that in mind, is even if someone is an expert at what they do and they're bringing their expertise to your business, so you don't have to train them on how to do their job in terms of like the techniques. You have to teach them how to do it inside your organization so they meet your expectations. You have to teach them how do they access the information that they need and things like that. So you have to really spend a good deal of time on onboarding and training. And we kind of approach it in this like kind of stair step approach where you train on something, then they can go do work, where then you come back a little while later and you train on the next thing. And then you train on the next thing. So in between each of the training, they're doing work of value until they're fully trained. So you get there a little bit of time until you train them on their entire job. With it, we then also look inside each of those steps as we're training, approach of first you do it, they watch, then you do it together, then they do it and you review their work, then they're on their own and maybe you're spot checking things. So depending on the task, once again, that path might look a little bit different. There's things that it's hard for you to do together and things like that, but you don't just hand it off and say, do it.
Right. And expect perfection.
Yeah, they have to do it and you have to review their work because chances are they're not going to get it 100% right the first time because their point of view, their backgrounds, their mindset and everything is different than yours. So when you say this, they're going to interpret it slightly differently. And until you review their work and help them see the gaps, they're not going to be able to do it exactly like you want. So you need to help them see those differences.
Yeah.
If you say, I need this like this, what they think this is different than when you think this is.
You mean we're different people? Yes. I love that. That's so good because I think we forget. And it kind of comes down to we've been doing it for so long ourselves too. It's like, why can't you just do this the way I want it without an explanation? And by the way, I'm sure you see that in corporate a lot too, right? I mean, I know I have where like the managers like, just do it this one way. And you're like, I don't know what that means. Or they get upset when someone does it the same way. I think that's almost like a human phenomenon. So it's so great that you're coming in to help with that. And I see exactly how you answered my question about trust, right? It's that constant feedback loop and being able to let them do small things incrementally until they figure out how to do it the way you want it done. I love that. It's such a systematic approach that's so helpful. So Jamie, if somebody is listening right now and they're like, oh my dear heavens, I need me some Jamie, please, like right now in my business, where should people reach out to find you?
Yeah, so you can head on over to growingyourteam.com. We have a bunch of resources. We have a podcast that you can access and you can schedule a call, or if you're just ready to schedule a call, you can go to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, jumpstart being all one word, and schedule a call so we can chat.
I love it. All right, you guys, we are going to have those links underneath this video if you're watching in YouTube or in the show notes if you are listening. Jamie, this has been so helpful. One, I loved hearing your journey and your honesty about the ins and outs and like it's never a straight line. I love that you shared that. And also thank you so much for helping all of our small business owners find their people.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for having me today.